Okay, we are recording. So let me go to the last slide that we saw. We were seeing the OSI model on the TCP/IP protocol suite. Okay, up to here, I think we saw. Okay, so network addresses or IP addresses, you are familiar with them. They are layer 3 addresses. And when you send a packet, the packet can pass through several hops. Normally, the source IP address and the destination IP address will not change. They should stay the same one. So, for example, if the computer that is here sends something to the server, we will have a first hop. The source IP address will be the IP address of PC1, which is 192.168.1.110. And the destination IP address will be the IP address of the server, which is 172.16.1.99. So in all the hops, in this hop, and in this hop, the source IP address and the destination IP address will not change. Now, at the level of MAC, it's different, which is layer 2. So here in the first hop, the MAC address, the destination MAC address, will be the MAC address of this router in this interface. And the source MAC address will be the MAC address of this PC. In this second hop, from the left router to the right router, the destination MAC address will be the MAC address of this router in this interface. And the source MAC address will be the MAC address of this router, the left router, on this interface. And in the last hop, the destination MAC address will be the MAC address of the server, and the source MAC address will be the MAC address of this router, which is the right router in this interface. So at the level of MAC, they will change because the data link layer belongs to the link where we are working. So here we are working in one link, so the MAC address has to be related to this link. Here we are working on another link. The MAC address must be related to this link. And here it's another link. So of course the MAC address should belong to this link. And in this link, for example, we have the network interface of the server. We have the network interface of this router, this network interface. Because this network interface belongs to another link. Okay, let's see that. Let's say that we have this internetwork and PC1 wants to send a packet to the FTP server. So PC1 will look first at its routing table. And its routing table is going to say, the FTP server is in the same network where I am. So PC1 needs to send the packet directly to the FTP server. It doesn't need the help of router 1. So there is only one hop. Remember that the switch is a transparent bridge, is a transparent switch. It is there, but it is like it is not there. So in this hop, this only one hop that we will have for this transmission, the destination IP address is going to be the IP address of the server, which is 192.168.1.9. And the source IP address will be the IP address of PC1, which is 192.168.1.110, as you can see it here. Now, at the level of the MAC layer, the data link layer, the destination MAC address will be the MAC address of this server. So this server has one interface, and this is the MAC address on this interface. So the destination MAC address will be CC, CC, CC 6 times. And the source MAC address will be AA 6 times, which is the MAC address of PC1 on this interface. Of course, I took this kind of MAC address because it's easy, no? But they are not real MAC address. They are just MAC address for the exercise. So let's see now a transmission from PC1 to the web server. So PC1 belongs to this network, and the web server is in a remote network, which is this one. So we will have 1 hop, 2 hop, 3 hop, 4 hop. So when PC1 want to send something to the web server, PC1 will look at this routing table. And its routing table will say, oh, the web server is not in the local area network. So since it's not in the same network where I am, PC1 have to send the packet to its default gateway. And the default gateway of PC1 will be this IP address, 192.168.1.1, which is the IP address that R1 have in this interface. So for all the hop, we say that we have 5 hop, the first, the second, the third, and the 5th hop. The source IP address will be the IP address of PC1, which is 192.168.1.110, as we can see it here. The destination IP address will be the IP address of the server, which is 172.16.199. And in all the 5 hop that we will have, the source IP address and destination IP address are not going to change. Now, let's talk about the data link layer, which is layer 2. In the first hop, the destination MAC address will be the MAC address of router 1 in this interface. So the destination MAC address will be 1111 6 times, as we can see here or here. And the source MAC address will be the MAC address of PC1. PC1 have this MAC address, AA 6 times. So we can see it in the frame. It will be there. So that's the first hop. So R1, when it's arriving R1, it will go up the stack. It will arrive in the physical layer, which is layer 1, and go up the stack, and then go down the stack again. So it will go up the stack up to layer 3. In layer 2, which is the data link layer, R1 is going to remove the Ethernet header. And it will give the result, which is a packet, to IP. IP will process the packet and realize that the destination, if you want to reach this server, you have to send it out this interface to R2. And when it will go down the stack, we will have encapsulation, which means that R1, when it's passed through the data link layer, which is Ethernet, R1 will add a new Ethernet header. Okay, let's see the second hop. So here, R1 will do the second hop. So R1 will check its routing table, and its routing table will say, if you want to reach the web server, you have to send the packet at this interface and send it to R2, which is 10.0.0.2. So in this hop, as I told you, the source IP address and destination IP address are not going to change. So the source IP address will be the IP address of PC1, and the destination IP address will be the IP address of the web server. Now, in layer 2, the destination MAC address, remember that the MAC address are local to the link where we are. So the destination MAC address will be the MAC address of R2 in this interface, which is 22.22.22.22.21, as you can see here also. And the source IP address, the source MAC address, sorry, will be the MAC address of R1 in this interface, because it's going to exit this interface. So it's going to use this MAC address as the source MAC address, which is 11.11.11.11.11.12, as you can see here. Okay, let's see now the third hop from R2 to R3. So here we have the third hop. So R2 is going to look at its routing table, and its routing table will say, if you want to reach the web server, which is this IP address, 172.16.199, you have to send the packet at this interface and send it to R3, which is 10.0.0.5. This is what the routing table of R2 is going to tell R2. So at the level of the network layer, which is layer 3, the source IP address will still be the IP address of PC1 because they don't change. And the destination IP address will be the IP address of the web server. Now, in the data link layer, which is layer 2, the destination MAC address is going to be the MAC address of R3, sorry, in this interface, which is 33.33.33.33.33.32, as you can see here. And the source MAC address in R2 send the packet or the frame at this interface. The source MAC address will be 22.22.22.22.22.23, as we can see here. Finally, there is a last hop. So now, let's say that the data is in R3, and R3 have to send it to the web server. So R3 will look at this routing table, and the routing table of R3 will tell R3, oh, you are directly connected to the web server, so you don't need to send it to another router. You can send it directly to the web server. So of course, in layer 3, which is the network layer, we will have a source IP address. We will have the IP address of PC1, which is 192.168.110, as you can see here. And as a destination IP address, since they don't change, we will have the IP address of the web server, which is 172.16.199, as you can see here. Now, in the data link layer, we are in this link. So the MAC must belong to this link. So the destination MAC will be the MAC of the web server, which is A, B, C, D, E, F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as you can see here. And the source MAC address will be the MAC address of R3 in this interface, which is 33.33.33.33.33.33 6 times, as you can see here or here, no? So what you have to memorize that for each hop, the layer 2 addresses are going to change, but the layer 3 addresses are going to be the same. They don't change in layer 3. They will change in layer 2, because MAC address or physical address are local to the link where I am. So if I am in this link, I can only use MAC address of this link. If I am on this link or on this land, I can only use MAC address that belong to this land. Now the IP address are global, so they don't change. For the 5 hop, the IP address will be the same, which means this will be the source IP address, 192.168.110, and this will be the destination IP address, which is 172.16.199, and that in all the hops. The only way that you can change IP addresses is that you have, for example, a NAT server. You have, I'm sure you have heard about NAT, network address translation. So NAT will change the IP addresses. But if you don't have a NAT server, normally we don't change the IP addresses, and they keep the same one from the source to the destination. Okay, we are finished with this chapter. That was what was left. So I'm going to go to the next chapter, where we are going to see more terminology. It's not today that we are going to do exercises, because we need to still go on and learn more vocabulary before we can do the exercises. Okay, so before you connect to the network, you need to create a communication channel between your device and the network. So this communication channel can be wired or it can be wireless. So for example, look here, we create a communication channel between a laptop, which is this laptop, and this is an access point or a wireless router. So the kind of technology that we are using here in the physical layer is Ethernet. So this is a UTP cable. Now, you can also have wireless connection, no? Wireless connection is more practical because you don't have cable, and it allows you mobility. So of course, it's a big advantage, but the bandwidth will be lower. That's what we can achieve in wired communication. And we will have more security problem in a wireless communication than in a wired communication. Okay, to connect, you need a network interface card. So here we have an example of a network interface card that we can put in a desktop or in a server computer. So you open the computer and you should have a slot. This is PCIe, sorry, X1. So if you have one slot that is free, PCIe, you can put this network interface card, this NIC. Now with USB, you have another possibility. Let's say that you want an Ethernet port. You can use, for example, this network interface card. So on one side, as you can see, we have a USB. It's a male port. And here we have a RJ45 connector. It's a female connector. So through USB, you can have your network connection if you use Ethernet. Here we have a picture with a laptop, and as you can see on the motherboard, the laptop already have a network interface card that is integrated. So we have a port on the side of the laptop where we can connect, for example, a UTP cable. This connector is called a RJ45 connector, and this is the UTP cable, no? And shield twist pair, as we will see. Okay, if you want to connect wirelessly, you don't want to use Ethernet, for example, you can use a wireless network interface card. So for example, here we have a Wi-Fi network interface card that we will connect through USB. And here we have a Wi-Fi network interface card, but this is PCI Express. This is X16, no? So you open the desktop or you open the server and you look if you have PCI Express slot free, which is X16, and if it's the case, you can plug inside this network interface card. And as you can see here, we have external antenna. We might be able to change them. So some network interface card will allow you to unscrew the network interface card, the antenna, and to screw a more powerful antenna if you need. Here, for example, the antenna is not visible. So there is no way for you, if, for example, the reception is bad or the transmission is bad, there is no way for you to say, okay, let's change the antenna to have a better transmission or reception. This card may allow it, no? Some of them do allow it, some of them does not allow it. So let's go back to the physical layer. We talked about the physical layer on last Tuesday. So what is the objective? It's to provide the means to transport the bits that make up the data that we want to transmit across the medium. So for that, remember, in the physical layer, we receive a PDU, which is a series of bits, series of 0 and 1. And what we are going to do is we are going to encode this series of 0 and 1 in a signal that can traverse the medium. So the signal will depend on the medium, as we saw last time. And the device that will receive the frame will do the inverse operation. It will decode. Decode is that you receive a signal and you transform it to a series of 0 and 1. This is called decoding. So as I was telling you, the kind of signal that you are going to use will depend on the medium. So you see this signal, those are electrical pulse. So this kind of signal, you can send them, for example, in a UTP cable or in a coaxial cable, which is based on copper. Now, if you use fiber optic, what you are going to send into the glass is light. So you will send pulse of light. If you use, for example, wireless, what you are going to send is a radio wave. So you have what we call a carrier, and you can modulate the carrier in phase, in amplitude, sorry, amplitude modulation. AM is amplitude modulation. In phase, phase will be PM, phase modulation, or in frequency. FM is frequency modulation. I have slides for that to explain what is the difference between amplitude modulation, frequency modulation, and phase modulation. So we'll come back on those after. So as we said in the last class, we have a lot of international organizations that propose standard for the physical layer. And some names are here. For example, the Telecommunication Industry Association will have standard like the 568A and the 568B. The International Telecommunication Union have other standards. IEEE have many standards, as you know. For example, 802.3, which is Ethernet, 802.11, which is Wi-Fi, 802.15.1, which is Bluetooth, 802.15.4, which is Zigbee, 802.16, which is WiMAX. They do have a lot of standards. So let's come back about encoding. So there is a way where you encode that is called Manchester encoding. So in Manchester encoding, in the middle of the bit that you want to transmit, you need a change of state. So you need, for example, a falling transmission, or you need a raising transmission. So Manchester encoding works like that. If you want to represent a 0, in the middle of the bit, you need a falling transmission. And if you want to represent 1, in the middle of the bit, you need an ascending transmission. Not a descending, but an ascending. So let's say that I want to transmit 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0. So for this 0, in the middle of the bit, I need a descending or a falling transition. So look at, we came from high, and as you can see in the middle of the bit, we have a falling transition, which means that this is a 0. Now, if after 0 I want to represent a 1, in the middle I need a ascending transition. So look at here, in the middle of the bit we have an ascending. An ascending transition means a 1. Then we want to represent a 0. So in the middle of this 0, which is here, we need a descending transition. Then we want to represent again a 0, 2 0 in a row. So in the middle of this transition, we need a descending transition. In the middle of this bit, which is a 0, we need a descending transition. Here we want to represent a 1. We need an ascending transition. Here a 1. In the middle of the bit, we need an ascending transition. Here a 0. In the middle of the bit, we need a descending transition. Now, let me explain you what is amplitude modulation. So let me take paint to explain you what it is. So when you transmit in the air using Wi-Fi, you need a radio wave. So you will have what we call a carrier. So a carrier is a sinusoid. So it's like a function. Where is my, okay. It's a function like that. Y of t is equal an amplitude time the sinus of omega t plus phi. So here you have what we call the amplitude. Here you have the phase, and here we have the frequency embedded into omega. So you can vary the amplitude, and if you vary the amplitude, it is called amplitude modulation. You can vary the frequency. If you vary the frequency, it's called frequency modulation, or you can vary the phase. So if I represent this signal, it will be a periodic signal like that. So for example, this will be plus A, and this will be minus A. So it has a certain frequency, no? Which means that this signal repeats himself with a certain frequency. So let's say that I want to transmit some bit using amplitude modulation. So let's say that the one I'm going to represent, for example, I want to transmit, let's say 0, 1, 0, 1, 1. Let me do it a little better here. Okay, so if you do amplitude modulation, you are going to have two amplitudes, a high amplitude and a low amplitude. And with the low amplitude, you will represent the 0. So this is a 0, and I use the low amplitude. Now you are going to represent a 1. There is a high amplitude, so you use the high amplitude. So 1 is with a high amplitude. Now you want to represent a 0, so you are going to use the low amplitude. Now you want to represent a 1, so you need the high amplitude. And here you are going to keep in a 1, so you keep the high amplitude, okay? So that is amplitude modulation. We are changing the A here. Now, what is frequency modulation? So let's say that I want to represent the same thing, a 0, then a 1, then a 0, then a 1, then a 1. So 0, 1, 0, 1, 1. So we will have two different frequencies, a high frequency for 1 and a low frequency for 0. So this is a 0. So we have a low frequency, which means that we have a signal like that. And then we want to represent a 1. We are going to put a high frequency, which means that the frequency is like that, no? Oh my God, it's not easy to use that. I wish I can use the right board. Okay, then we have a 0. So we are going to use the low frequency. Then we have a 1. We are going to use the high frequency. Then we continue with a 1. So I keep with the high frequency. Okay, this is frequency modulation. And you have a third one, which is phase modulation, where you will change the phi. Phase modulation, what you change here is the phi, which is here. You change this phi. So let's see what will happen at the level of the signal. So let's say that you want to represent the same value. You have a carrier, you modulate the carrier, this time in phase. So let's say you want a 0, a 1, a 0, a 1, a 1. So you have a sinusoid, and you maintain the same phase. And let's say here you go from 0 to 1. You change the phase. So you don't change the amplitude, you don't change the frequency, but you change the phase. So let's say that here you have a 0, you need to change the phase. Here you have a change of phase because you go from 0 to 1. And here you keep the phase. You don't change it because you went from 1 to 1. Okay? So here, if I have a 0, I have to continue like that. I have a 1, I have to maintain the phase. Okay? So you keep the phase, the same phase, if you keep the same value. And you change the phase if you change the value. Okay? So as you can see in phase modulation, here we have a change of phase because we have a change of value. Here we have a change of phase. We have a change of phase. Here we keep the phase. Okay, there is no change of value. We go from 1 to 1, so we keep the phase. So this is the tree modulation that we can use. So this is for a radio wave when the medium is the air or is the vacuum, no? Okay, to express the number of bits that I can serialize into the medium, we use something that we call the bandwidth. So the bandwidth is the amount of bits that I can copy or I can serialize into the medium. So it is expressed in bit per second. So we will use bit per second or kilobit per second or bit per second, kilobit per second, or megabit per second, or gigabit per second, or terabit per second. So at the beginning, for many people, when they listen, for example, 100 Mbps, 100 megabit per second, they think it's the speed of the signal into the medium. In fact, it is not the speed of the signal into the medium. It is the number of bits that you can serialize and insert into the medium per second. So 100 Mbps means that in 1 second, I can insert into the medium 100 million, because it's mega, 100 million bits I can insert into the medium. So what will be the speed of the signal? The speed of the signal, for example, in a UTP cable is close to the speed of the light. It's like 80% of the speed of the light. So it's very, very fast. But it's not the same thing, the speed of the signal into the medium, that the bandwidth. It's two different concepts. And when you use the Ethernet technology, you will see that we use terms like Ethernet. When we want to say Ethernet, we are talking about a technology that works in 10 Mbps, 10 megabit per second. You will heard about fast Ethernet, which is 100 Mbps. You will heard about gigabit Ethernet, which is 1000 Mbps. And you will heard about 10 gigabit Ethernet. 10 gigabit Ethernet is 10,000 Mbps, or it is 10 Gbps. Gbps, gigabit per second, no? Mbps, megabit per second. There is another term that is called the throughput. So the bandwidth is a theoretical term. So when they say that Ethernet is 100 Mbps, it means that theoretically you can insert up to 100 million bits per second into the medium. But now, if you make some performance assessment of, for example, TCP or UDP, you will get values that are much lower. So this value take into account many things that happen in the network. For example, collision. For example, queues. When you say that fast Ethernet is 100 Mbps, it means that in the base case, I will reach 100 million bits per second. I will be able to serialize 100 million bits per second. So I'm sure that in your house, to test your modem, you use something that is called test speed. Test speed will do a test of speed between your computer and a server, a test speed server that they have in the internet. And it will report you two values, the download speed and the upload speed. And you will see that they are asymmetric. The download speed is much higher than the upload speed, because what you do at home generally is download information. You really upload very few information, which means that most of the traffic go from the internet to your house, and very little traffic go from your house to the internet. It's why we prefer to give a higher bandwidth to the download and a lower bandwidth to the upload. So this test or this assessment of the network that you will do in real time will give you something that we call the throughput. The throughput vary in the time because the network conditions vary, but the bandwidth does not vary because the bandwidth is something that is theoretical and is something that say the maximum bandwidth or the maximum throughput that you can reach is the bandwidth. So for example, as I was telling you, if you talk about 1 gigabit Ethernet, which is 1000 Mbps Ethernet, the bandwidth, this is 1 gigabit Ethernet, is something that is theoretical. But if you go and do some performance test, you will have something that is much lower. There is another term that they call the throughput. So the throughput, the TCP throughput, will be, there is something that we call the good put. So the TCP good put will be the throughput that you observe at the level of the payload of TCP, which is that when you remove all the administration, all the traffic, the overhead that is necessary in TCP, like for example, to establish the station, to maintain the station, the acknowledgement, all this, what is left when you remove all this is the good put, which will be even lower than the throughput. Okay, so in question of connectors, we have a lot of different type of connector or interfaces. So for example, this is a Cisco router, and as you can see here, we have a switch integrated into the router. It have 8 port, it have 9 port, no 1, 2, 3, 4, it have 9 port. Those are female port and they are RJ45 port. No, they are sockets. Here, for example, you have a RJ45 port, and this is a gigabit Ethernet interface, which is 1000 Mbps. Here you have USB port. You are familiar with USB. So you can connect, for example, a flash drive here. Here you have the console port, which is the blue port. And here we have the auxiliary port, which is the black port. And this is another gigabit Ethernet interface. So of course, you will have a lot of port, and the form factor will depend on the technology that you will be using. Okay, so let's talk about the characteristic of the copper media. So you can transmit, for example, pulse, electrical pulse in the copper media. Those are examples of transmitting pulse, but you can have another type of encoding. So there is a notion that we call the attenuation. The attenuation is the resistance of the media to let the signal traverse the media. So the longer is the communication media, the higher is going to be the attenuation. So look, let's say that I want to transmit this series of 1 and 0, this series of bits. When I transmit it at the beginning, the signal is very clean. It is like that. Now, after some time traveling the media, the signal have a tendency to get weaker. So to lose its sharp change here, no, between 0 and 1. So it's become like a signal like that have lose some strength. And when the signal lose some strength because of the resistance of the medium, we call that attenuation. Now, we can have noise. So there are two big sources of noise: the electromagnetic interference and the radio frequency interference. So the electromagnetic interference are due to, most of the time, engine. So for example, if you have an air conditioner at home and you run UTP cable too close to the air conditioner, when the air conditioner is working, the engine of the air conditioner creates a magnetic field. And this magnetic field puts noise into your signal. So another source of electromagnetic interference will be this kind of LED that we have in the ceiling. This is a fluorescent LED. We are using here tube light, no? And I don't know if you know that associated with this kind of LED, we have something that is called a ballast, which is a black box. Sometimes you even listen to it. It makes noise, the ballast, sometimes. So this ballast also creates an electromagnetic field. So you should not pass UTP cable close, for example, to fluorescent lights. So the fluorescent light have a tendency to disappear. Now all the light is going to be LED lights, but we still have a lot of fluorescent lights, and those fluorescent lights are create noise into your UTP cable. So be aware that you have to pass your cable far away from the ballast. Otherwise, you will have interference due to electromagnetic interference. Now, there is a second source of interference, which is the radio frequency interference. So who can put radio frequency interference into your UTP cable? So we have several sources. For example, all the antenna that transmit will put in your UTP cable radio frequency interference. For example, if you have an access point at home and you have other devices connected through UTP, this access point that sent radio wave will impact the quality of your signal in the UTP cable because it will put radio frequency interference. Another source will be, for example, if you use a micro oven. You know that micro ovens are also based on frequency, no? They emit a wave, and the wave will hit the food that you put inside the micro oven. Since it's a wave, it have a signal, it have a frequency, it will also interfere with your UTP cable. If at home you have a wireless phone, you know, the one that you plug into a base, not the cell phone, no? The one that you plug into the base, and when somebody calls you, you grab the phone and you can walk inside the house and talk with the person, but you cannot go very far away. Okay, those also use frequency and use radio wave. They will induce noise into UTP cable. So this noise is called radio frequency interference. So to understand what will happen, let's say that you have this signal. This signal is a clear signal. And let's say that you have some interference, and the interference are like that. What will happen is that they will add up. And when they add up, you will get this signal. You see, this signal is the sum of this, which is the signal that I want to transmit, and the noise due, for example, to an air conditioner. That will be the signal that the destination receives. So if there is a lot of noise, there is a probability that, for example, look at this bit. I wanted to transmit a 0, but the noise was so high at the level of this bit that instead of having a low voltage, I have a tendency of having a high voltage. So I will interpret this bit as a 1, when in reality it was a 0. So this is the danger of the interference, no? And there is something that we call the crosstalk. So the crosstalk is, since in a UTP cable, we will see we have 4 pairs of wire. Each pair of wire generates a small magnetic field. And this magnetic field put noise into the other pair of wire, the other 3 pairs of wire. So this is called the crosstalk. A way to try to cancel the crosstalk is to twist the pair. So the UTP cable, you will see that we have 4 pairs of cables inside, and they are twisted to try to avoid the effect of crosstalk and to avoid also the effect of radio frequency interference and electromagnetic interference. So look, this is a UTP cable. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 pair. So this pair have 2 cables. One cable is right blue and the other cable is blue. This pair have 2 cables. One cable is right orange and the other one is orange. Here we have right green, and here we have right brown and brown. So this is called unsheathed twist pair because the pair are twists, as you can see, to avoid the crosstalk. And as you can see here, we have how do you call that? This protection is not shield. It's why we call it unshielded twist pair. Here we have an image of what we call STP, shield twist pair. So as you can see, we still have 4 pairs. The pair are twisted, but look at what we have around the pair. We have a foiled shield. So this foiled shield is to protect the cable, the pair that are inside, against the electromagnetic interference and radio frequency interference. And look at this STP cable. Also in the middle, it has something in plastic. If you look in front, you will see that it's a star with 4 arms. So let me show you how it will be. If I look in front, I will have like a star like that. This is what is inside, in plastic. So here you will pass 1 pair. Here you will pass another pair. Here you will pass another pair, and here you will pass another pair. So this star try to cancel the noise that 1 pair do over the other pair of cables to avoid what we call the crosstalk, you know? Remember that the crosstalk is the noise that a pair of cable induce on another pair of cable. So for example, here you will have the right green pair. Here we'll have the right orange pair, the right blue pair, and the right brown pair. No, it will be like that. Okay, here we have also a wide technology. So this is coaxial cable. We'll come back to the coaxial cable because we have slides to talk a little more about the coaxial cable, as we have slides to talk a little bit more about UTP cable or STP cable. So look, this connector that is there is a RJ45, and this person is doing a cable. So when you do a cable, you need to untwist the pair before you insert them into the connector. And there is a tool that we use, which is called crimping tool. We will see it, we have a picture of it. And this tool will fix the connector with the UTP cable. So this is STP. As you can see, in this case, we don't have, for example, the star in the middle, but we do have the foil shield that is there to protect the 4 pair of cable from noise that come from outside, no, from electromagnetic interference noise and radio frequency interference noise. So, the jacket, we call that the jacket. So this is a RJ45 connector. You can see it. This is the top part. This is the lower part. This is a UTP cable. So we have a jacket and we have pairs. And remember, the pairs will be right orange, orange, right green, green, right blue, blue, and right brown, brown. And they are twisted to avoid the crosstalk, as I was telling you, no? So this is STP cable. So we have the jacket. We can, some will have, some will not have. We can have, for example, here a foil shield. Then we have the pair. In this picture, the pair have also a foil shield. Each pair have a foil shield. So it doesn't have a star in the middle because the pair are already protected with the foil shield. So you can have the foil shield or maybe you don't have it. Of course, having or not having will change the cost of the STP cable. So STP cable is much more expensive than UTP cable. And it's more difficult to work with STP cable because they are thicker, because they have something inside that don't have the UTP cable. The UTP cable is very flexible, very easy to manage, very easy to work with, and it's very thin comparing to the STP cable, no? Now, if you need to put a twisted pair close to an air conditioner, you better use STP, okay, to protect your signal. Otherwise, the signal will be affected by the noise that will induce the engine of the air conditioner, no? So we use STP when we need him. If we don't need him, we will go with UDP because it's much cheaper and much easier to work with. This is the coaxial cable. So in the center, you have the core. It is done in copper, and it is a conductor. It is conductor. Around the core, you have insulator. And around the insulator, you have a copper shield. So, you know, in electricity, you need 2 cables. So this will be one of them, and this will be the second. So this will conduct electricity, and this will conduct electricity also. And then you have the outer jackets. So we used to use coaxial cable in the past for Ethernet, but they were not practical. So today we don't use them anymore. And what we use is UTP cable when we can use them. Now, if you do have cable TV at home, you will have a coaxial cable that arrives to your house. Generally, the jacket is black. So if you have a coaxial cable, a black cable, with this type of connector, which are called BNC connector, is because you might have cable TV, or you didn't subscribe to it, but the cable is there waiting for you at any time. You take the subscription and you will have cable TV, no? So there are many things that you should take into account when you have a network. For example, it is very important that you should use different paths for the electrical cable and the data cable. They should not be together, because the electrical cable create a big magnetic field. On the electrical cable, if you run them in the same canal as the data cable, the electrical cable will induce noise in the data cable. So you need 2 different canals. You need a canal where you will put the electrical cable and different canal where you put the data cable. And you need to separate this canal with a certain space, like 10 centimeters. You should do that, no? If you want a high quality network. You need to inspect your network from time to time to see if everything is okay, if you don't have connection problems. All your devices that will be in your rack must be grounded, because your employee is going to come and touch with their hand the router or the switch. If it is not grounded, there is a probability that the metal that is outside the router of the switch is transporting current. If it is the case, your employee might receive a discharge. So it's very important to connect the chassis or the external part, the metallic part of all these devices to the ground, so you avoid electrical discharge to your employee. When you do a network connection, normally you should employ two companies. A first company will run the wire for you, and then you apply a second company that will come and verify that what did the first company is well done. And of course, this company have to be totally different, because if you employ the same company, they do the job and they certify that it is correct. They will always certify that it is correct because it's the same company. Now, if you take two independent companies, one company do the job and the other one verify that the job is well done and certify your network connections. Okay, so as I was telling you, we learned that it was better to twist the pair. So if you look in the past, we were not twisting the pair. The pair of cable were parallel to each other. Today we twist the pair. And recently we realized that if we twist the pair with a different step, it's even better. If you look at this image, look at the step that is used for the blue cable. You see, from here to here, the distance is small. From here to here, the distance is small. From here to here, the distance is small. If I look at, for example, the bright brown cable, from here to here, the distance is much bigger. From here to here, the distance is much bigger. So we twist the four pair today, but with different steps. It's even better. So we learn about that, no? So the idea of twisting the pair is to try to cancel the crosstalk and also minimize the effect of electromagnetic interference and radio frequency interference. When you go to a shop and you want to buy UTP cable, there is a category. So category 3 is good to transmit voice. It's very cheap, but it's low quality. So it will only allow you very low bandwidth. Category 5 is much better. We use category 5 in data transmission. Category 5 support up to 100 Mbps. It can support 1000 Mbps. Now, if you want really 1000 Mbps, they will recommend you not to use category 5, but category 5E, which is much better. So 5E is done for 1000 Mbps. Category 6 will support 1000 Mbps, 10 Gbps, which is 10,000 Mbps. It can support 10,000 Mbps, but it is not that recommended, but it can support. So of course, the higher is the category, the better is the cable. The higher is the frequency, or the higher is the transmission range, the transmission rate that I can use. But also the more expensive is the cable. Of course, a cable of category 3 is much, much cheaper than a cable of category 6. So look a little here. We have RJ45, it's a plug. This is how we should see it if we look it in front, how we should see it if we look it on the side. So here you have the female connector, the socket. And to use this socket, to connect the cable to this socket, we use a tool that is called a punch down tool. So here we use a tool that is called a creeping tool, and here a punch down tool, where we are going to have the female connector in a patch panel. So in the networking closet, you will have rack. On those rack, you will install the router and the switch. And you will also install what we call a patch panel. So this will be part of the patch panel. It's where your horizontal cable will end. They will end here. And with a patch cord, you will go from the patch panel to the active device. That can be a router or a switch. Look at here. We have two pictures. This is the correct way to do a cable. And this is an incorrect way. Can you tell me why this is incorrect and this is correct? So inside the RG45 connector, you have a tooth. And when you use the crimping tool, you make pressure, it will push the tooth against the jacket. So what is the objective? If you pull over the cable, you want the strength to be done over the jacket. It's why you have a tooth that enters the jacket and makes strength over the jacket. We can see it here. If you do this, you are wrong. What will happen if you pull the cable? The jacket is not inside the cable, which means that the tooth is not making strength against the jacket. So if you pull the cable, the strength will be done here in the connection between the cable and the connector. It will be very probable that you will lose your connection. Okay, because here it's not secure. What makes things to stay together is the tooth that you have here that will enter the jacket. So when you create cable, you have two standards, the 568A and the 568B, which is defined by the Telecommunication TIA, Telecommunication Industry Association. So the TIA 56A is like that. On the RJ connector, you have to put the pair like that. The right green, in pin 1. The green in pin 2. The right orange in pin 3. The blue in pin 4. The right blue in pin 5. The orange in pin 6. The right brown in pin 7. And the brown in pin 8. So when you do the wiring installation in some places, you need to work either with the 568A or the 568B, but you should not mix them. You should take one of the two standards and keep with it. So let's say that you are going to do straight through cable and you use the 568A. So both ends of the cable, you will connect them to the RJ45 following this standard. Now, let's say that you go to another client and you decided to use this standard, which is the 568B. If you do a straight through cable, you will have to connect both ends to the connector using this standard, which means that in pin 1, you will put the right orange. In pin 2, you will put the orange, blah, 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 up to pin 9. If you look at these two standards, what we have changed the orange with the green. So where you have green here, you will have orange, and where you have orange here, you will have green. Now, we can create several kinds of cable. For example, a straight-through cable. Let's say that we use this standard. So both ends will use this standard. And there is another cable that is called a crossover cable. A crossover cable on one end will use this standard, on the other end will use this standard. So in some places, you need to use a straight-through cable, and in other places, you need to use a crossover cable. So I have a slide to tell you when you use a straight-through cable and when you use a crossover cable. So in general, crossover cables are connecting between devices that have the same function. So if you look here, if you connect a PC to a PC back-to-back, you need a crossover cable because they have the same function. If you connect a hub with a hub, you need a crossover cable. If you connect a switch with a switch, you need a crossover cable. If you connect a router with a router, you need a crossover cable. Now, hub and switch are almost the same thing. So if you connect a hub to a switch, you need a crossover cable. Or if you connect a switch to a hub, you need a crossover cable. Now, when you connect a PC to a switch or a PC to a hub is very similar to a switch, you use a straight-through cable. On a switch to a router or a switch or a hub to a router, you need, look at hub to router, you need a straight-through cable. Or switch to router, you need a straight-through cable. So sometimes you have to use a crossover cable, sometimes a straight-through cable. Remember that crossover cable, on one end we have the 568A, on the other one end we have the 568B. Okay, those are the tools that we use when we cable a place. So this is called a crimping tool. So you see here, there is a space where you will put the RJ45 connector. And you will do that with your hand so that the tooth of the RJ45 connector will be pushed against the jacket of the UTP cable to protect the UTP cable if you pull on the UTP cable. And this is the punch down tools. This is used with the female connector, and this is used with the male connector, no? Okay, when you do a cable, you need to try the cable. So we do have some tester to test the UTP cable that we are going to do. So the tester will give you the map. For example, the map is, for example, pin 1 on one end is connecting to pin 1 on the other end. Pin 2 with pin 2, pin 3 with pin 3, up to pin 8 with pin 8. That will be a straight-through cable. So it will give you the map, but it will also compute the length of the cable. So the horizontal cabling cannot be longer than 100 meters. And 100 meters will include the patch cord, the horizontal cabling, and the other patch cord. So it cannot be more than 100 meters. These tools, this tester, will also give you information of the signal lost due to attenuation. So remember, the longer is the cable, the more signal loss I will have. And it will also give you information about crosstalk. Now let's talk about fiber optic. So fiber optic is much more expensive. And since it's much more expensive, we use it in in where we really need it. For example, it will be too expensive to connect those computers through fiber optic to the switch that we have in the wiring closet. The copper cable is much cheaper than the fiber optic cable. So fiber optic allow very long distance. I was telling you that UTP cable allow distance of 100 meters, but fiber optic allow distance of kilometers. And fiber optic have higher bandwidth, much higher bandwidth than UTP cable. Another thing that is interesting with fiber optic, that it is less prone to attenuation, and it is totally immune to electromagnetic interference and radio frequency interference. So if you use fiber optic and you are going to pass close to an engine because there is an air conditioner, or you are in a company that produce that use big engine, you don't have to worry if you use fiber optic, because it's totally immune to electromagnetic interference. Or if you are close to, for example, you have a TV, they have an antenna to cover the city close to your house. Of course, this antenna will generate radio frequency interference. So the wave that will generate this antenna will put noise into your UTP cable, but it will not affect fiber optic. So fiber optic is very thin, very, very thin. It is smaller than the hair of a people, each cable. And what you will put inside, it's light, pulse of light. So inside, normally we can have a glass. It's one of the technology that we use. Or we can use also silica. So look at, this is a fiber optic cable that was cut. So look at, totally in the center, you have the core. So the light will travel inside this core. Around the core, you have the cladding, here or here. So the cladding acts as a mirror. Every time that a mode of light wants to go out, the cladding will bounce it back inside the core. So it's act like a mirror to avoid that the ray of light, go out from the core. Then you have 3 levels of protection. So a first level that is called the buffer. Then you have a second level that is called the strengthening material. So this material is the same material that we use for bulletproof vest. Then you have a third level of protection, which is the jacket. So we protect the fiber optic with 3 levels of protection, as you can see. So remember that the light travels here in the core, and the cladding is to bounce back the light inside the core when it's want to go out. So look at, we have 2 technology in fiber optic. We have a technology that is called simple mode and a technology that is called multi-mode. Simple mode is when we have just one ray of light, or we say one mode of light. So this is much more expensive, the single mode. It's allow much longer distance. It's also allow higher bandwidth. So the light emitter will be a laser. Laser is very expensive, but the light is totally condensed in one ray of light. So it's much better. Now, multi-mode, we will have several rays of light. The emitter will be a LED. It's not a laser, it's a LED. So LED is very cheap, But a LED, unfortunately, will create several rays or several modes. So if I show you, let me give you a small explanation with that. So you have here the core, and over the core you have the cladding. This will be the cladding, no? So if you use a laser as the emitter, the laser it's a very condensed light. It will have normally only one ray. And the ray will tend to be in the center of the core. Now, if the ray tries to go out, the cladding will bounce it inside. Now, if you take a multi-mode fiber optic, you also have the core and the cladding, no? The cladding is the mirror. The problem of a LED, you have a LED, that the lights go all over. It's not like a laser. So since the light go all over, you will have, for example, a ray of light that will enter like that and will bounce like that. But you will have another ray of light that will enter with another angle and will bounce like that. And you may have a ray of light that enter totally parallel, the blue one that I'm showing that. So what will happen between these three different ray of light? Which one is going to arrive first to the destination, first to the other network device? The blue one, the green one, or the red one? What do you think? Which one will travel faster? Which one will arrive to the remote device first? The blue one, exactly. Why? Because it doesn't bounce. So the second one that will arrive will be what? The red one. Because it's the path that the red one have to do is smaller than the path that the green one have to do. So what will happen with LED, which is the multi-mode technology? This technology, we call it multi-mode, no? When we use a LED. Multi-mode or multi-ray. And this one is single mode or single ray. So laser is very expensive. So what will happen? What do you think that the device that is at the end will see? Let's say that I sent a pulse, which means that I put the LED on and put the LED off. What do you think that the device that receives the signal will see? So at the beginning, it will be totally dark. Then it will start to see the light, but it will be very fade. Then the light, it will not be intensive. Then the intensity of the light will go increasingly, and then it will decrease, and fade out. Why do you think we will have this phenomenon if I send a pulse? Why will we not see, for example, no light, light, no light? If I use a laser, I will have that. I have no light, suddenly I have light, and suddenly I have no light. Why here? There is a transition from no light to I'm seeing some light, and the intensity of the light is getting higher and higher. Why we have a transition? Because we have several modes. So look, this mode travels faster than the other one, the blue one. So the blue one is the first light that I will starting to see. Then I will see more and more mode that will arrive, so the intensity of the light will increase. So what I want to tell you, this is a cheaper technology. Since it's a cheaper technology, it will allow me a bandwidth that is much lower than if I use a single mode fiber optic. The single mode fiber optic will be much more expensive. So when you use fiber optic, you have different type of connectors, and you need two fiber to have a full duplex communication. In each fiber, you will have pulse of light that travel in one direction. So each fiber will be simplex. So you need two fiber to have full duplex, because one fiber will only to send from A to B, and the other fiber will be only to send from B to A. So you need a pair of fiber. It's why those connectors are in pair. Okay, the color that we use for single mode fiber is the yellow one. So when you see something that is yellow, you know that we are using single mode. It's a single mode patch cord here. And this is a multi-mode patch cord. We are using different connectors. So it's very expensive technology, and you need a special training if you want to install fiber optic. The people that install fiber optic use very expensive equipment, and they use also microscope, because this is so small that they need to magnify what they are doing. So let me show you some problem that we have with fiber optic. When you want to do a connection, look at the problem that you may have, that you don't have with UTP cable. So let's say that I have a fiber optic here. And I want to connect it with another fiber optic. So if I misalign them, look at what is going to pass, to what we are going to happen. Let's see this mode. It can go out. You see? Because you have a problem of misalignment. You didn't put this one in front of this one. Let's see another mode. For example, this mode maybe also go out. Let's see another one. For example, this one. This one will go. But you see the problem of misalignment? So you need to put them one in front of the other one. This is something very small. It's very difficult because it's a hair. It's smaller than a hair. So you need to put a hair in front of the other hair. So it's why you need microscope to see what you are doing. Look, another problem that you will have. If you cut the fiber optic, you don't cut it well, what will happen is that let's say that you have a mode that comes like that. If you don't cut it well, it will go with another angle. It will not go straight. So when you cut a fiber optic, you need to polish the end. Like they use something that is similar to the sandpaper. They need to polish it. So you need to finish your fiber optic like that. It has to be polished. Very nice end here. So the mode goes straight. And another thing that will happen with fiber optic is that, let me show you. let's say that you have a cable like that, and there is an obstacle, so you went with another angle here. Okay, so what will happen? Let's say that you have single mode technology. It's come in the middle of the core. It's come in the middle of the core, and pop, what will happen here? We have the cladding. The cladding will bounce it back. So it will bounce, 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 and eventually it will bounce less and less and go straight again, because you have a curve. So when you use fiber optic, if you use a curve that is too sharp, the light is going to go out. So you cannot do, for example, a very sharp angle. You cannot do that, because if you do a very sharp angle, you might have, for example, and go out. It's bound sometime and finally go out. Let's say that you have another mode that was coming, is too sharp and also go out. Let's say that you have another mode that is coming and go out. So when you use fiber optic, there is, when you do a curve, there are some recommendations. You cannot use a very strong curve, because if you use a very strong curve, the light will go out from your fiber optic. Okay, so as I was telling you, here there is a comparison between the UTP cable and the fiber optic. So in the fiber optic, we have much higher bandwidth, we have longer distance. Fiber optic is totally immune to electromagnetic interference and radio frequency interference. UTP cable do suffer from them. From electrical hazard. Here, fiber optic does not conduce electricity. So you are highly immune from electrical hazard. Here you can receive a discharge, no? So the cost is very high in fiber optic for the media and the connector. The installation is very high also, and you need people that are training. In the case of a UTP cable, the cable, the connector are very cheap. The installation is also cheap. You don't require special skill to do it. If you go now down in AIRS all 261, we are doing the cabling of this room. So you will see a bunch of cable. They normally go from wall plate in the wall up to the ceiling, and we run them in the ceiling, so you don't see them, to the place where we want to bring them. So if you go down, I recommend you to go down today and just have a look into 61. You will see that we have a bunch of blue cable. They are UTP cable, because we are going to start using this very soon. Okay, I'm going to stop for today here. I see you next week.